Lisa just informed me that today is John Wayne's birthday. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Yeah, I know. That's kind of an epic, fitting moment for today. And so if you don't know who John Wayne is, then I don't know what you've been doing for most of your life. But it's a fitting day to celebrate an epic man. And so I'm going to read just the preface from this book as we start our service this afternoon. Brothers Cat and Will Johnson were born on the Lost Conchas Ranch containing over 8,000 acres, all located on the high desert plains in northwestern New Mexico. Finding themselves without parents, they learned the value of brotherly love as they grew up side by side working and defending the ranch against outlaws and gold seekers. With a quick precision that belied his age, the medicine man grabbed Will's wrists and flicked the blade across it, then did the same with Cat. Neither boy displayed any pain. They were instead too focused on this man and his work. With a thong cut out from the hide of a white buffalo, he tied the boy's bleeding wrists together and took up his chanting again. All too soon, it was finished. Jack, their ancient burro, came to the ranch by way of the deserters, who loaded him down with stolen gold and silver. The Mexican soldiers were members of General Santa Anna's Los Saqueadores, I don't speak Spanish, squad, or the looters. They were very aggressive and obsessed with seizing as many valuables as they could from an enemy and any local sympathizers. This supposedly was in the name of the Mexican government. Escaping from the soldiers, Jack adopted the boys and did his best to protect his human friends. Karina had been waiting in the cave for some time. She leaned apprehensively into the low rock wall, scanning the horizon for any movement. Granddad's 4440 rested on her lap. The hem of her pleated skirt was just above her knee, revealing a beautifully bronzed, perfectly sculpted and smooth leg. Another beautiful day dawned with the rays of sun peeking over the horizon. So beautiful it seemed one's eyes would fall out of their head should they stare too long. The killer's eyes nervously moved back and forth between the two brothers. His tight lips formed a straight line across his face. A 3 days' growth of beard couldn't hide the tobacco stain running down the corner of his mouth. It opened slightly into a grin that was more of a smirk. The man rolled his chew to the other side of his cheek and prepared for what was to come. Cat knew this was it. Death was about to make an appearance. Will? Yeah, I got him. While staying in a crouched position, Will twisted his body around to stare into the double-barreled shotgun less than 10 yards away. So the question that I pose today is, how do you properly celebrate a man of such epic proportions as Lee Henry was and is? My name is Jay Smith, and I'm a friend of the family's, and I'm a good friend of Justin Lawrence's, and Lisa and Bill I've known for a long time, and I got the chance to know Papa and Nanny over the last, kind of a decade with your family, and got to be a part of Russell and Lauren's wedding, and I'm so honored to be able to come up here and be a part of this service, because what I'm finding out about this man, which is revealed in every person I've met and every moment I've seen in this beautiful, sprawling ranch that we see here, is that Lee Henry was more than life. He was bigger than life. And as Lisa and Justin and I sat down, we walked through this and we talked about today's celebration. I kept coming back to the enormity of Lee Henry. So how do we celebrate a man who served proudly in the Navy, who was an auctioneer, he was in real estate, he owned a marina, he loved to chuck wagon and cook, he was a cowboy, he was a husband, he was a friend, he was a dad, he was a pilot, who did so many things in his lifetime that it makes most of us sit here and think, I would love to be able to do half of those things before I meet God at the end of my life. And we talked about it, and Chuck mentioned this yesterday, and I know one way that I want to start by honoring him is that if this is Memorial Weekend, and we know that Memorial Day weekend is a weekend to celebrate those who paid the ultimate sacrifice during service, but we also want to do something today to honor Lee, but to honor all of those in this room who have served our country or are currently serving our country. If you will stand, if you ever served in the military, we'd love to give you our appreciation this afternoon. From the depths of our hearts, we say thank you for your service, for the life that you've poured out, and the love that you've poured out, and your commitment to our country. So how do you celebrate a man like Lee Henry? When I heard that he passed away in November, I reached out to Justin because I knew how significant this man was in the life of so many. And I started to think back to my life and started to think back to people in my life that I've lost. And there's something different about the loss of Lee Henry. Is that Lee Henry is a bit of a throwback, not only in the cowboy sense, but in the sense of a patriarch in the family. And that's the word that kept coming back to me. And so I sent a text to Justin. I said, Justin, a lot of people aren't going to understand what it means to really lose a patriarch like that. All of us have lost grandparents, and for some it's a big deal, and for some it was something where we didn't have much relationship. But not all of us in this room understood what it was like to lose a patriarch, a man that was the cornerstone of an enormous family, a man that everybody looked up to, sons and daughters, friends, grandkids. Lee Henry was the patriarch of this family. And so the loss is bigger than normal losses. This is the loss of something that has withstood so many years and something that means so much. And so what do you do to celebrate such an incredible man? Well, here's the thing, is we don't really know. But we put together a pretty fun afternoon. It's going to be an epic celebration. Justin and I have jokingly called it the Lee Henry Variety Show. I was told I shouldn't say that. So how do you celebrate a man? I don't really know, but I'll tell you what, we're going to give it our best this afternoon. And today's going to be a day of celebration. Today's going to be a day of sorrow and grief. I know it's been 6 months, but I know what loss is like, and it is still as real today as it was after Thanksgiving. So we're going to celebrate, and we're going to cry, and we're going to laugh, and we're going to honor an epic man, Lee Henry, this afternoon. Will you pray with me? Holy and gracious God, we give you thanks that you are here in this moment, that you are near to the brokenhearted. And God, we give you thanks that we got to share in the life of such a legendary man. Bring your peace this afternoon. Let your grace flow. May we remember, not with hearts that don't have hope, but we remember with hearts filled with hope that again we shall see him in that great and glorious reunion in the afterlife. We give you thanks for family and friends and food and stories and all the things that you bless us with. So be with us as we celebrate life and give witness and honor to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You guys doing okay? My name's Callahan. I'm one of the grandsons. There's no way that I'd be able to get through a speech or anything like that. So best way I can honor my papa is through song. So I'm going to sing you guys a song. It's called The Outskirts of Heaven. And I know Grandpa, he wouldn't want to be in some fancy mansion or anything like that. He'd want to be on the outskirts. And so this is his song. In the river there's dogwood trees and honeybees, blue skies and green grass forever. So Lord, when I die, I want to live on the outskirts of heaven. Now it says in the King James, in the Almighty's kingdom, he mentions a mansion is built just for me. I'd gladly trade for this little farmhouse acreage, the backyard shaded, and this big homeward swing. That's where I want to hang my wings when I die. I want to live on the outskirts of heaven, where there's girls for miles, hay in the fields, fishing in the river, where there's dogwood trees and honeybees, blue skies and green grass forever. So Lord, when I die, I want to live on the outskirts of heaven. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the good Lord knows me, knows I need blue skies and green grass forever. So Lord, when I die, I want to live on the outskirts of heaven. Yeah, Lord, when I die, I want to live with my Papa on the outskirts of heaven.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jake Henry. I'm one of Lee's grandkids. I'm here to read his obituary. I hope you all enjoy it and hope you learn something. Russell Leroy Henry, Old Leather, was born to Russell and Martha Henry on November 2nd, 1938 in Oklahoma City. He passed away on November 25th, 2017. In 1955, he graduated high school and joined the Navy as a bombardier navigator. He served a total of 12 years. While in the Navy, he met Sharon K. Nelson and married her on February 28, 1959. They were married 58 years. He was a man who lived life big. He loved his family and his friends. From being a devoted husband, father, and papa, to a real estate broker, to a musician, to a fishing guide, to an avid hunter, to owning Fountainhead Marina for 8 years, to becoming a private pilot with his own planes, to buying land, to founding the Rockin' LH Asparagus Farm. He was always creating. He developed and manufactured his own line of mustards, pickled asparagus, and other gourmet foods. He created a western town and hosted chuck wagon cookouts. He won many awards, including his Agritourism Award for the state of Oklahoma in 2007. He wrote songs, cowboy poetry, cookbooks, and even published books. His poem, Morning Business, along with many of his recipes, have been published in a London cookbook, Cowboys and Cookouts, and the All-American Cowboy Grill cookbook by Roy Rogers' daughter, Cheryl, in Nashville, Tennessee. He also wrote the book, The White Buffalo Tether. In his retirement, he found a love of rebuilding planes. He is survived by his wife, Sharon, his 3 children, Chuck, daughter Lisa, and her husband Bill Boone, Mark and his wife Tracy, his 9 grandchildren, his 8 great-grandchildren, his brother Rod and wife Pam. Russell Leroy Henry was a beloved husband, brother, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. He will be deeply missed.
I'm short, give me a minute. They didn't plan this for me. Maybe. Alright, I'm Brittany Henry. I am one of Lee Henry's grandchildren. And I spent 6 months trying to figure out what I was gonna say. And I know that I don't have a lot of self-control to make a speech good enough to represent him. So I'm going to read a poem that I wholeheartedly believe represents who he was as a person. He wrote it, and I think you guys will agree that it reminds me a lot of him. It is called Morning Business. Rattling of pans in the pre-dawn light signals the end of a cold, bitter night. Jawing and grating of the coffee grinder's song says, "Get up, cowboy, it's near breaking dawn." A grouchy old figure with pot hook in hand reflects a lifetime of cooking with wrinkles and tan. His breakfast from memory is simple to fix. It's salt pork, coffee, sourdough, and lick. His kitchen of canvas, chuck wagon, and Hanes prances and dances in the flickering flames. From inside the chuck wagon of the cookie removed a large sack of flour and a bottle of booze. With his back to the bedrolls from the bottle, he takes a nip of white lightning to ward off the snakes. The tools of his trade, a bowl he has kept, through thunder and lightning and rustlers he's met. Washed in the streams and scrubbed by the sands, his large wooden bowl he carved with his hands. After blending the lard and the fixins so neat, from the crock pours the sourdough, it's sour but sweet. The biscuits are cut, then to the Dutch, are crowded together in the master's touch. The coals from the fire, from on the lid with the lip, are hot as a colt drawn from the hip. The golden brown sourdough from the Dutch oven pan has pleased and filled the call of many a man. With his back to the cowboys riding over the crest, a nip he will take before attacking the mess. With a bottle in hand and marks from a quart, as he toasts Thanks cookie cut in the dirt.
I'm Carol Conley. I'm the wife of Craig Conley, a very dear friend of Lee and Sharon Henry. I'm trying to straighten my voice out. I was surprised to be able to contribute today, but it seems that I had left some words in a journal whenever we have come to visit Lee and Sharon. There are several entries, but I'm going to share with you 2 entries that speak from my heart. I need to say, first of all, when you meet someone that you're in love with and the first thing he wants to do is take you to meet his friends, that's gold. So he took me to meet Lee and Sharon. Then we met family. When, it's just how it goes. When we found out that Lee was experiencing some treatment, we dashed quickly to get here, and as we were leaving, this is what I wrote. to Sharon and Lee. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your love, your integrity, and your fierce strength. As the seasons change, so do our lives. Changing in the grand scheme of things, according to the divine master plan, I have always and always loved the way we just pick up, just where we left off. There's no fuss, no awkward reacquainting, just taking the last conversation forward, plates full, hands around a good cup of coffee or a strong, stiff drink. Your hearts are always so open, and I love that. Your wisdom, your care and kindness, your love of life, and deep inspirations, those beautiful inspirations. As Gus always said, it's the little bitty everyday things that matter most, and you do those so well. Where you may not hear from us every day, I can assure you that weekly and often daily we say your names with love, create deep, big love. And as we heard of Lee's passing, we arrived immediately, as fast as our horses would get us here. And that night I wrote this: Lee has gone on ahead of us, always so fearless and deliberate, determined, intentional, and on purpose. There are no tools invented that can measure the amount of love and respect and influence that a man like Lee has imparted to others. The integrity of a life well lived shines bright on the rocking LH and the Henry family. And I can only say this: oh Lee, blessed was the day that you were born, because your life truly mattered.
Hey, Gus.
Morning or afternoon, whatever it is. Well, Callahan, I can't play or sing a guitar, so I have to read mine. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, my name is Craig Conley, and my wife Carol is just ahead of me there. My grandkids and my friends call me Gus. I can do this.
Yes, you can. You can do it.
You know, I've known Lee Henry for over 30 years. Some longer than some of you grandkids have known him. Unfortunately, I didn't get to spend that kind of time with him that y'all did. Either fishing or hunting or flying or making mustard. His mentorship was life-changing. I watched he and Sharon at the Dallas market, or here at the house when busloads of people would come. I've never seen such love. They taught me about love. It's a sight to see. You can see the way they looked at each other. You can see the way that he treated Sharon with the utmost respect. Where I came from, respect is not negotiable. So after years of watching and listening and learning about true love, the day finally came into my life that love came to me, the sweet Carol. Changed my life forever because I knew what I was waiting for, because I had watched them. Soon after we were together, she mentioned it. We came right up here for biscuit making, graduate level 101. Because we had a friend that had sourdough, and his biscuits were like rocks. It was horrible. Got to be a better way. Lee said, get your ass up here and I'll teach you how to make biscuits. So despite the lack of sleep that night and some strong whiskey, the next morning came and I passed with flying colors. You don't sleep much when you got to have biscuits ready at 6:30 in the morning. Lee is the kind of friend that never forgets you or lets you down. You can talk to him every day, or you can not talk for a week, or you can not talk for months. And he's always the same. Our greatest bond was around Lonesome Dove. It was clear he had to be Captain Call because he had to be in charge. And I had to be Gus because of my previous life that they knew so much about. It's the second time we've lived this story, and here's what I have to say about that. I got Woodrow. Life is short. Some are shorter than others. It's not the dying I'm talking about, it's the living. And he lives here today. And I have some final thoughts. I got Woodrow, I can see you now. You're up there in heaven just herding them cows. A lifetime trip we had to take. Who knew we'd have to hang our old friend Jake? Blue duck all around us, we couldn't slow him down. Until that day at the jail, he finally hit the ground. You and I go back, way back for so many years. Now this passing moment brings up fresh tears. We both know it'll happen, not really sure how. We'll come back together in the living somehow. So find us a new frontier, somewhere for us to roam. A safe place this time that we can call home. No Comanches, no snakes, just water and tall grass. A ranch made in heaven for all of us at last. Now, I know you're not complaining and causing a fuss, because if you are, someday you will have to deal with old Gus. We can't say goodbye to a legend on a mission, so we'll just have to say you had a hell of a vision.
Don't lean on the podium.
I will if I want to.
Need a break.
I knew Gus would show me how to get up here without choking up, but he did not. Thank you, Bill. I'm Bill Boone. I was Lee's son-in-law, married to Lisa. Whew. We had so much fun. We had so much fun. I didn't know what fun was until I married into this family. It taught me how to dress like this and everything. But when I first got here, I didn't get to watch the first half, but I got to watch the second half development of the Rockin' LH Asparagus Farms. All over in that field where you parked was all planted in asparagus. Everything over there past these tall trees was planted in asparagus. And it was just a family operation. The office was in the house, and that little pinkish looking building over there was called the plant. They would take it all over there. Sharon would pickle it, put it up in jars. Chuck would mix up all the mustards, and then Lee would go to those showrooms in Dallas and Atlanta and wholesale that stuff all over the country. He had a customer in Australia, which was just amazing to me. But anyway, I'm here to tell the truth about the business, and it was the biscuit that made all of this go. We were quail hunting up around Beggs with Dean Lee. I saw Dean earlier. He's here, Janice, somewhere. And Dean was putting us in the birds, and we drove past this auto salvage yard, and there was a broken down wooden wagon in the middle of it. And so Lee wanted to know who owned the salvage yard, and we went to Dean Lee's house, and he called the guy up and he bought the wagon, and he paid him $300, which I couldn't believe. I mean, the bottom was completely out of it. What do you want that wagon for? I want a chuck wagon. Okay. So when I came back a couple of weeks later, he had an amazing shop in there. I've never seen a shop like that, and he knew his way around that like nobody. But anyway, when I got back, he'd replaced all the broken boards, and he'd built a chuck box, and he put it in the bottom of the wagon. It's exactly like the chuck box over there in Boot Hill. They got Ronnie and Chuck and Justin got a hold of the old plans, and they built that in Ronnie's shop just a few weeks ago, and that's where Sharon's going to keep his urn. So whenever we want to visit, that's where we're going to go. I got to catch up here. But anyway, he said to me, he said, there's no business in having a chuck wagon unless there's sourdough biscuits coming out of the back end of it. And that began my long apprenticeship of making sourdough biscuits. We made thousands of biscuits. Any occasion we could find an excuse for, any kind of weather, and sometimes it was just me and him, and that was okay too. I guess our first watermark was when Mark and Tracy got married, which was this weekend, 22 years ago. And we did, actually everything was on that side of the pond back then, so we did it over there, but it was all among the chuck wagon. And it was a great time. I mean, we had a horse-drawn surrey, we had the whole thing, so happy anniversary, guys. I do need to figure out where I am now. Okay, there weren't any cattle drives. There still aren't any. But the wagon went to work anyway. Lee was already wholesaling his product to the gift shop at the Cowboy Hall of Fame, so he got himself invited to the Memorial Day Chuck Wagon Gathering, which they're probably having right now. But starting right then, he started retailing his mustard out of that wagon. And for the next 17 years, that wagon went everywhere selling mustard. I've got a list. Oklahoma State Fair in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, over to Arkansas for the craft show in Bella Vista, Iowa State Fair, Nebraska State Fair, Kansas State Fair, Texas State Fair, Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and then back to Oklahoma City for a Fair of the Heart to catch those Christmas shoppers. And then at one time or another, he won Best in Show in all of those venues. And now, grandson Justin selling t-shirts at every one of those same venues, except I don't think he has Nebraska yet, but he's every place else. He learned from the best. But it wasn't all business. One year, Lee and Gus got to go on a trail drive. It wasn't really a trail drive, it was a fundraiser for ALS. But they started in Austin and they headed towards San Antonio, and Lee got to drive the wagon, and they would go from one Walmart to the next, and they'd set up camp and they'd raise money. I was invited. I stayed in the office, so he would call me each day and put the phone down on the road so I could hear those horses clip-clopping down the road, and then give me a hard time because I wasn't there with him. But Father's Day weekend 1999, I did go along with him. We took the wagon to the Pawnee Bill Wild West Show Chuck Wagon Cook-Off. And there's Pawnee Bill right there. And it rained cats and dogs all the way up there. It rained while we were setting up the wagon, and it was still raining the next morning of the competition. And in fact, we were the only wagon that could keep a fire going, so we ended up feeding breakfast to all the other wagon crews and the staff at Pawnee Bill's. Now the wagon won first place for most authentic wagon, and then Lee won first place in the cook-off. His dish was beef, beans, and biscuits. But he had more fun feeding the people in the rain than he did winning first place. But Lee was never one to sit around on his laurels. After they handed out the awards, he had the whole afternoon to kill, so he needed something to do. Well, we were dressed up like this. We were also wearing our guns. The curator of the Pawnee Bill Museum was running around like he was the sheriff, and he had a couple of deputies. So Lee kept egging him on until finally we got in a gunfight. And so me and Lee are behind the wagon. We're shooting at the sheriff and the deputies. They're in the trees shooting back at us. Well, I got caught up in the moment. It was a real chance to play real cowboys. And so I knew the only way to flush that sheriff would be to run across the open ground, bent down, fanning my pistol. So I took off, but I was a little past my skill level, and I stumbled about halfway, and I had to do a sideways somersault to break my fall. But when I landed on the back of my head, it was a little bit hard, so it took me a second to recover. But when I did raise up, there the sheriff was, laid out flat on the ground. You know, he was a gamer too, so he flushed when I made my move, and then Lee drilled him right there on the spot, and so don't lean on the podium. But the crowd loved it, we loved it, we got an applause, and it was just, but it was typical of Lee Henry. Whatever the situation was, he could elevate it for everybody that was around. And I just always loved him for that. We went back the next year. He won first place again. But in the meantime, the orders kept coming in. The asparagus farm turned out to be UPS's biggest customer in McIntosh County. So we had to build that silver building next to it, and that's where all the inventory was, and that's where all the shipping went on. But by this time, he was on the cutting edge of computers. He even had a guy in here building computers and trying to sell them. Of course, Justin got the first computer ever, and you know what that led to. But anyway, he was selling online to go along with wholesale and retail at the state fairs, and so they just outgrew the manufacturing, so they decided to outsource it. And there was a lady in Tahlequah that wanted to build a food processing plant, but she had to have an anchor customer to get approved on her loan, so Lee signed on as the anchor customer. He maintained total control over the ingredients and the processing and things like that. But he wasn't there on site all the time, and every now and then he'd get frustrated with that arrangement. He'd call me up. He'd say, "I'm gonna need a lawyer." And I said, "All right, you want me to sue that lady?" He says, "No, I'm gonna go up there and take care of it the cowboy way. You just need to come get me out of jail when I'm done." But somewhere along the line, we started cooking for large groups of people. When Craig and Carol got married, we went down to College Station. We cooked out of Craig's wagon, but we fed breakfast to 150 of his wedding guests. And my poor parents, over the years, when are you going to come and see us? I said, "If you want to come and see me, you got to come to Lee Henry's house." So they brought their trailer up here several times, and we had a lot of fun on holidays. But they wanted to have their 50th anniversary out here. We turned it into a family reunion. None of these buildings were here, but we were up to 4 wagons in, and so we fed 70 boons for 3 straight days. And we pulled it off. It was a lot of work. But now, since there's no manufacturing, Sharon doesn't have anything to do. So Lee's looking around for something for her to do. He thought, if I can feed those folks for fun, I can probably feed them for profit. So he built the pavilion up there. He built this Lonesome Kettle Theater. There was a 6-stall men and women's bathroom over there. He had teepees over there, and he got the county commissioner to widen the road. And so tour buses on their way to Branson would stop here. And you could get a chuck wagon meal, you get live entertainment on this stage, and then you go across the dam to the Lonesome Dove gift shop. And whatever money you had left, we'd try to get rid of it right then. And after a while, this became a destination for the tour bus drivers. This is where they were heading. This was their final destination. Now that went on for about 10 years. And then in 2011, Lee and Sharon decided to shut it down and retire for a while. And so they did. He sold everything that wasn't nailed down. He wasn't one to hang on to the past. So the bathroom's gone, and he sold all of his wagons, all of his gear. Mine's left. But that's the biscuit chapter of Lee Henry's life, but it's a large book, and that's only one chapter. Like I said, I didn't get to know him in the beginning, but I've heard he started out managing at a Montgomery Ward store. Then he sold lake lots at Eufaula. Then he owned a car lot. Then he bought the Fountainhead Marina, and Sharon and the kids worked their tails off for 8 years while they were operating that. And then he bought this place. And he planted pecan trees, and they've all failed. So then he planted the asparagus. And then he built the wagon. So with Lee, it wasn't about the success or even the failure, it was about the doing. And when he had been there and done that, even if it was going well, he was ready to move on to something he hadn't done yet. And that's what he did. That left quite a wake. But that wake, Mark knows, that wake was powered by his family. It wasn't that he made his family number one priority. His life was family, and whether they liked it or not, they were an integral part of every endeavor he set out on. His love was family. He was Uncle Lee, Cousin Lee, Brother Lee, Papa, Dad, father-in-law. Whatever the relationship, he loved you right where you were. When I married into the family, my son Joe became his grandson immediately. That was a big life lesson for me, and Laurel can say the same thing. And if you got to be a friend, you were family. You know, it's been said that the only reason any of us are even here in the first place is after God created the earth, He was so pleased with it. He wanted to know what it would be like to live here. And so He created us in His likeness. And He put us here to live. And I can promise you that Lee Henry did not disappoint Him. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Russell Henry. I'm Callahan's older brother, grandson of Lee Henry. Before we did this deal, Callahan was all nervous that he was the number one, right out of the chute. And now I'm just like, why the heck did I go for the middle when I've been crying and everybody's choked up, and I'm just going to hopefully make it through this song. But as many of you know, Papa was the greatest man I've ever known, and the best way I could do it was to sing a song as well, not sit here and talk because I'm about to already start crying again. So this one's Go Rest High. This is by Vince Gill. I know the highest mountain that Papa would want to rest on is Bald Mountain, so I'm just going to sing this song for him. So. I know your life on earth was trouble, and only you know the pain. You weren't afraid to face that devil. You were no stranger to the rain. So go rest high on that mountain. Son, your work on earth is done. And go to heaven shouting love for the Father and Son. How we cried the day you left us. We gathered round your grave to grieve. Wish I could see the angels' faces when they hear your sweet voice sing. Go rest high on that mountain. Son, your work on earth is done. And go to heaven a shout
I just love my family. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for loving our family, for being with us, loving my daddy. My daddy, goodness. I never imagined this earthly life without my daddy. Daddy, you have been with me from day one and have always been such a big part of my life, and you've lived bigger than anyone I have ever known. And I truly miss him, especially when I'm trying to wire a ceiling fan or fix the toilet. I want to start today and share a prayer entry from my journal dated November the 30th, which was about 5 days after he died. The scripture I was praying with came from Luke 2, verses 8 through 15, where the shepherds were keeping watch at night, and the angel of the Lord appeared, and the glory of the Lord shone upon them, and they were terrified. But the angel said, "Don't be afraid. You see, I bring you good news that there's a Messiah, a Lord that has been born in the town of David, and this is going to be a sign to you. There's going to be a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly a great cloud of angels appeared. Well, that word "suddenly" leapt off the page at me because I had been praying for months for suddenly, for God to answer suddenly, to change the circumstances suddenly. And today in the word "suddenly," the angels appeared. Suddenly, he took Daddy home. I am over the mountains with such deep gratitude in the midst of my grief. And I thank God for showing Daddy such mercy and hearing his heart and hearing my deepest heart prayer. You know, being a hospice nurse, I had seen this type of journey before, and I was so grateful that Daddy didn't have to travel down that road any longer, because the next several weeks would have been unbearable to him and Mom, to all of us. Dad's cancer had returned with a vengeance, and there was no stopping it. He had faithfully received every treatment that wonderful VA hospital could give him. His tumor was growing around his spine and coming out his backside. His pain was unbearable, and he was beginning to lose control of his legs. Our last trip to the oncologist, she told him, "I don't think you're strong enough to take any more chemo." But we also knew without it that tumor in that open place would just get bigger and bigger and the symptoms would worsen. So it was decided we'd do another round of treatment, but only a partial amount. You see, he had canceled Thanksgiving here at the farm that we had done our whole lives. But after his last chemo and his round of steroids, on Monday he told Mom, he goes, "You know, I feel normal. I want you to call the kids and tell them Thanksgiving's back on." That was a Thanksgiving miracle for our family. We drove in Thursday night to help Mom for the Friday Thanksgiving celebration. Of course, the propane heat wasn't working in the bed and breakfast, so my faithful brother Chuck, after being given many, many directions from Dad, spent the next few hours working on it until it worked. Well, Dad was really tired and not feeling well when we arrived, so he clearly told us, "I don't want to do this anymore," meaning his cancer journey, that he and Jesus had had a talk and it was all good, and he told us he was ready to go, and then he went to bed. Well, I was up early the next morning at the bed and breakfast, and I stepped out the back door around 6:30, and suddenly I met Daddy face to face. "Well, good morning, Daddy." He said, "Good morning, darling." I was surprised to see him up and moving so well. He had a sock cap on and a heavy coat, and I said, "What are you doing?" Well, he needed to see what Chuck had done, and so he was out there inspecting Chuck's work. He spent the next 20 minutes with me telling me about how he had ran that propane pipe, how to bleed the line, why it had stopped working, and what to do the next time. It was a beautiful, peaceful morning, and it was so still, and there was my dad doing always what he did, teaching me. I had him to myself that day for a few moments, all by myself. He then said, "Sissy, I need you to do something for me today." Over the past year, he had built this waterfall with a hill of rocks off the back porch. It was very steep, and he'd even seen Mom fall a couple of times trying to weed it and keep it clean. He wanted me to convince her that it needed to be taken down, and it needed to be taken down today. I started laughing on the inside because I knew that Mom hated that waterfall. She never wanted it from the day he had started talking about it. So I said, "Daddy, of course I'll convince her, no problem." So it wasn't too much longer than I saw Dad on the golf cart. He had scooped Bill up, and they drove around looking at the farm and the chuck wagon and all the places they had spent, just the two of them. The next thing I know, I'm looking for Daddy, and someone says he and Mark has gone to the airport. He wanted Mark to look at something with computers, I think. I know they were there for over 2 hours, just the two of them. As we were in the kitchen preparing the Thanksgiving meal, the meat was ready to be carved. And see, this was a big deal to our family. Dad always carved the meat. He was so tired, but yet he took his place, this time on a chair. He took out that old, large carving knife that he had used for years and began carving that meat and beautifully arranging it on that tray for his family. As Daddy was carving, I said, "Hey, Mom, Dad really wants you to take out that hill in that waterfall as he's afraid you're going to fall." My mom just went, "Really?" She goes, "Well, you don't have to convince me. Take it down." Then we all gathered around that huge old table that Daddy had built many years ago for his family, and we had a Thanksgiving blessing. Daddy filled his plate, and he ate right there with us. We had a feast. With full hearts and full stomachs, we all got together as a family and started taking down that big old mountain. Dad watched us, of course, and gave orders from the golf cart. The weather was simply beautiful in November, a lot like this. We hauled all the rocks and all the treasures that he and Mom had adorned on that waterfall. And Callahan got on the tractor, and suddenly that big old mountain was taken down. We celebrated that by taking a large family photo right where that mountain was. It was finished. Daddy was so exhausted he went to bed. So Bill and I were packing to leave as we knew Daddy needed no more company. He needed rest. I went in to wake him up because he would always get mad if I left without telling him goodbye. So I kissed him and I said, "Daddy, I love you. We're leaving, but I'll be back soon." He looked up at me laying in that bed and he said, "I wished you would be here in the morning when I woke up. Matter of fact, I wished you were here every morning I woke up." I said, "I know, Daddy. I'll be back in a few days, I promise." He said, "I love you, sissy." Leaving was so hard that evening, I wept as we drove out of the driveway, and I left my heart here with my mom and my dad. The next morning, Mom knew something was wrong. Dad was suffering horrifically with pain, and he couldn't get his breath. So she called Chuck, because he's always there, and he immediately helped Mom get him to the VA. Then suddenly, he died. That big old mountain of a man was taken down. Mom was able, by the grace of God, to say no to resuscitation when they asked her what they wanted her to do. She simply said, "Is he gone?" "Yes, he is." "Then don't do anything." She knew he no longer wanted to live the way he was having to live. That wasn't life for Lee Henry. It was finished. What a day of grace that was for our family. To getting him to the hospital before he died, to Mom's courage to stand up and stand on Daddy's wishes, to our family regathering that afternoon after he died and having a celebration, a good old-fashioned wake, as Justin put it, of his life with his grandsons, his family drinking all of his whiskey and toasting him over and over again, to wearing his cowboy boots and his cowboy clothes, to playing cowboy movies, to popping his whips, to shooting his guns, to shooting the lights out. Who was that?
Joe.
Yes. To telling stories, to showing pictures, to crying and laughing and singing. I remember Mom's words, "This is glorious and so comforting." The next morning we were gathered in the kitchen recalling all that had happened, and suddenly in walked one of his dearest cowboy friends, Craig Conley. He and Carol had drove 9 hours to be with our family. Vision this. In he walks, wearing his full cowboy regalia, his Sunday best, just like Augusta. Gus from Lonesome Dove, of course, you know, Captain Call, their friendship resembling the two former Texas Rangers having all their adventures together. Craig and Carol came carrying in a feast a full, freshly smoked brisket and all the fixins just to honor my dad. It was so special, it took our breath away. And you know, love does that, takes your breath away, just when you don't know how you're going to take your next breath. And then the river of love has continued by all who followed afterwards, bringing gifts, their presence, love, prayers, calls, texts, tears, stories, to our family being able to go to the funeral home where I had the privilege of putting Dad in his favorite Navy shirt, to the revelation of making Boot Hill because we knew Dad wouldn't want to be in a cemetery and Mom really didn't want him on the mantle in her house. To the 8 hours alone with Mom cleaning out his robe. All of it gift in the midst of such grief and loss. What an orchestration of grace that only God could have done for us. All for my dad, all for my mom, all for our family. Glory to God in the highest heaven, the scripture ends with. Peace on earth to those whom God is pleased. My precious and beloved Mom, she said these words to me the evening of his death. Lisa, my heart is so full of peace. I had no idea it would be this way. Much has been given to our family. I think God is very pleased with my mom and all that she has poured out to Daddy and to all of her family. Thank you, Mom. As you've heard, Dad has had such a huge life with many different experiences, and there isn't enough time to tell you everything, but I wanted to share a few, and you'll hear some repeat. But Dad was an avid hunter, and he taught us all how to respect guns and how to hunt. Deer, elk, pheasant, ducks, turkeys, quail, dove, bears, wild hogs, you name it. When I was 12 years old, I'd already killed 3 deer with him by my side, and in the middle of that field, he showed me how to gut, clean a deer, and bite the liver. It was meat for our family, and we always had animals, from raising baby quails to raccoons to chickens and horses, cats and dogs, and anyone who was around him for the last few years knew about Katie and Cricket. And poor Sweet Pea came last, so Sweet Pea's not on there. He loved his tiny fur babies, and they brought much comfort and joy to his heart. One Christmas, our church had a program, and as a child, I sang "O Holy Night." Daddy came and watched, and he told Mom I looked like an angel. It was that night he gave his heart to Jesus. He even became a lay minister on Lake Eufaula, holding lakeside services for the campers. As you can tell, he loved country music. He played the guitar and bass, even wrote songs and had them recorded. He bought me my first guitar and taught me how to play by painting fingernail polish on the neck of the guitar to show me where to put my fingers. As you heard, he was a real estate broker, car salesman, a master carpenter like his daddy, building and creating in his shop or on his land. He made rocking chairs for his grandbabies, rocking horses, a manger for my front yard, and even an oxen yoke that he and Mike Scoville and Callahan hand scraped and carved for our home. He built everything you see here. He was the host of all hosts. He taught me about electricity and plumbing. He was a fisherman and a guide. He bought Fountainhead Marina with that restaurant, like he said, about the time we were old enough to work, because he wanted to make sure we knew how to work. And he did, and we do, as evidenced. Especially Chuck and Mom. We worked 7 days a week. We worked in the restaurant, the fishing dock. We did guiding. We worked in the bait shop. We cleaned fish. We skied. We got in trouble. We drove boats, but we did not ever drag Main Street. We never did. There would be these huge fishing tournaments, too, that they would make us get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to fix breakfast for 200 men and gas up all their boats. We worked very hard as a family, and we still worked very hard as a family to do this. But we also play hard. He was a creative artist. He learned how to make turquoise and silver jewelry, paint, draw. He bought a laser machine, and he became a wonderful laser artist, lasering anything that wouldn't move, including Mom's toilet seat in her bathroom. He wrote and published books like Jay talked about. He even wrote a book teaching one how to fish called Doodle Socking. Those are over there on the memorabilia table to take a look at. He also, with Mom's help, of course, because he couldn't spell a lick, wrote and published 3 cookbooks, which included so many recipes he used with his gourmet products. but he also included many family recipes so he could preserve them. My daddy loved airplanes. I don't remember when he became a pilot, but I remember his love of flying. He would share stories about being on aircraft carriers when he was in the Navy. He loved watching movies about planes. He flew flight simulators and built and flew model planes. He bought his own plane, then made sure Chuck and I became pilots when we were 16 and 17. He became the president of the Eufaula Flying Association. He spent many hours at the Eufaula Airport, where he still has a plane and 2 hangars. After he stole the asparagus business, he began buying, rebuilding, repainting, and reselling planes with one of his dear friends, Stan Cosby. When Dad would come to visit me, he and I would sit on the backyard of our porch in El Reno and watch aerobatics. Where we live now today in Edmond, I can sit on the back porch and I can watch a neighbor fly his model planes for hours. So last week in the evening, I'm sitting on the back porch and I'm working on this talk when suddenly a white airplane appears over my head very low and buzzes me. Boo! I gasped and spontaneously said, "Oh, Daddy!" With my heart so full of him, I lifted my eyes to this white plane, which brought my eyes to this unbelievable cloud formation that looked like an eagle from his Navy SEAL. And it was huge, with the wings expanded and his head turned. For a few moments, heaven opened up and I was swept up in my dad's presence and his arms being filled with love, peace, comfort, laughter, and assurance that he was okay. I watched that plane turn towards the right and come right back and cross right in front of me. I was laughing the whole time. He must have had fun asking God to do that. But then it was over. The clouds dispersed, the sound of the plane gone, but my heart was imprinted forever. And just a few days later, in a scripture I was reading out of Acts 2:2 says, "And suddenly there came from the sky a noise like a strong driving wind, and it filled the entire house where they were." That moment filled my entire house. My dad made his last flight November the 25th, 2017, and he flew off to the west. I have one last story, and then I'm going to sing you a few songs. Once when I was in nursing school, Daddy told me about a chicken that had a craw full of feed and it was going to die if I didn't help it. I'm a compassionate soul, so I was going to help it. So Daddy and I did surgery on that chicken on the kitchen table with hopes to save its life. After making an incision, there's my dad. Let's take a moment. And he's flying to the west. It is finished. Okay, back to the chicken. So, Daddy and I did surgery on that chicken on the kitchen table with hopes of saving its life. So I made an incision. I cleaned that craw out and I sutured that chicken up with Mom's needle and thread. I'm afraid the poor chicken didn't make it. But Dad was so proud we tried. You know, Daddy was never afraid to try anything, and I loved that about him. He gave that gift to me. I've never been afraid to try anything because of him. So what a legacy he has left all of us. Of course, my mom was the one to always help him be successful in everything he did. Behind every great man is a woman who is being ordered around and doing all of the dirt work. Right, Mom? Daddy certainly loved us all, big and hard. So in closing, I'd be amiss if I didn't sing a few of his favorite songs that he taught me when I was around 10 years old. These songs and many, many more have always remained in my heart, and I will forever be who I am because of him. Think of me as a 10-year-old little girl. Elijah was a wooden Indian standing by the door. He fell in love with an Indian maiden over in the antique store. Elijah just stood there and never let it show. face was red. Kalijah, that poor old wooden head. Goodbye, Joe, me gotta go, me oh my oh. Me gotta go, pull the P road down the bayou. My, you've on the sweetest one, me oh my oh. Son of a gun, we'll have big fun on the bayou. Jambalaya, crawfish pie, to feel it gumbo. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna see Mama Cherry me-o. Pick guitar, feel fruit jar, and be gay-o. Son of a gun, we'll have big fun on the bayou. Out where the bright lights are glowing, you're drawn like a moth to a flame. You laugh while the wine's overflowing, while I sit and whisper your name. Four walls to hear me, four walls to see, four walls too near me, closing in on me. Tiny bubbles in the wine makes me so happy, makes me feel fine. Your cheating heart will make you weep. You'll cry and cry, and you'll try to sleep, but sleep won't come the whole night through. Your cheating heart, it'll tell on you. When tears come down like pouring rain, you'll toss around and call my name. You'll walk the floor the way I do. Your cheating heart, it'll tell on you. I saw the light, I saw the light. No more darkness, no more night. Now I'm so happy, no sorrow inside. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. I wandered so aimless, life filled with sin. I wouldn't let my dear Savior in. Then Jesus came like a stranger in the night, and praise the Lord, I saw the light. Everyone, I saw the light, I saw the light. No more darkness, no more night. Now I'm so happy, no sorrow inside. Praise the Lord, I saw the light. Praise the Lord, I saw the light.
It's your show, Mom.
We don't smoke marijuana in Muskogee.
Come on.
Yeah! We don't take our trips on LSD. hippies out in San Francisco. I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee. Place where even swears have a ball. We still wave Old Glory down at the courthouse. White lightning still the biggest thrill of all. Leather boots are still in style if a man needs footwear. And beads and Roman sandals won't be seen. Football's still the roughest thing on campus. And the kids here still respect the college dean. I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee. Places even swears can have a ball. We still wave Old Glory down at the courthouse. White lightning's still the biggest thrill of all.
You wanted it without music. I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee.
Let's sing it for Lee!
A place where even squares can have a ball. We still wave Old Glory down at the courthouse. And white lightning's still the biggest thrill of all.
In Muskogee, Oklahoma, USA.
Alright, baby, that's a good job.
I broke my guitar hitting it.
Attention. If you would, if you're able, please rise for military honors. Pose. Please be seated. On behalf of the President of the United States, the United States Navy, and the grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service. All right, face. Forward, march.
Introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm his granddaughter Jessie. I'm going to read you guys an amazing Bible verse, John 14, 1 through 6. Jesus comforts his disciples. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If there were not any rooms, would I have told you that I was going to prepare rooms for you? And if I go and prepare the rooms for you, I will come back and get you and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. Thomas said to him, "We do not know where you are going." So how can we know the way? Jesus answered, "I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to God except through me."
Wow. What a beautiful, let me see if I can get my life together. Woo! There's a lot of emotions, a lot of celebrations, a lot of powerful moments in that service. And I want to remind us of just a few things in closing. The first one comes from the passage that Jesse read for us. And, you know, these moments are difficult. And that is an understatement, and I feel that in the songs that are sung and the moments that are celebrated and the pictures and the presentation of the flag and how powerful and beautiful that is, but also how difficult it is, because each one of these moments is the reminder of our loss. But that passage is the reminder that even though this stings, even though this is a difficult moment, death has not and will not win in the end. that we stand on the promises of our Father in heaven, who says to us that though this life may fade away, that we have eternity with him. And we stand in that promise and in that hope today. And sometimes it's difficult to remember that. And sometimes there'll be lonely days. There'll be hard days. But in the midst of all of them, we remember that we will see Lee again on the outskirts of heaven. I was asked to be here, and I just want to say just something before I finish. Sharon, I just hope you feel as celebrated in the midst of all of this as Lee was. Because without you, there is no Lee. And without Lee, there's no you. Because you two, you were it. You became one when we celebrated Russell and Lauren's wedding. To have these lives and families that have gone before them to set the example of how to love one another and care for one another and build one another up was something that we talked about a lot and something we celebrated with you. And so I'm so glad to see this epic walk-in picture. It looks like a WWE wrestler coming in and jump over the ring and start knocking people out. But to be able to have y'all and your example, I know meant the world to them. And so thank you. And we hope that you feel as loved and celebrated as all of these people tried to do. So Justin invited me to breakfast with the boys. What was it, yesterday morning? It feels like it was forever ago because he said that it started at 6, and I said, a.m.? And yeah, that's when the biscuits get cooking. And so I came out here, and I've never experienced, I'm a city boy, and you're like, yeah, we can tell. But I'm a city boy, and so I got here, and I just kind of took it all in, like a chuck wagon, whatever that is, and cooking things and sourdough biscuits, and I knew what bacon was, and that was delicious. But I talked to Bill a little bit, and there was an image that stuck in my mind that I just want to share with you as kind of our closing thoughts as part of this celebration. And he had this bucket, and he keeps it kind of in the middle shelf on his chuck wagon, and I asked him what it was, and he was kind of telling the story about how you make biscuits, and I didn't know any of these things. But he said it's the sourdough starter, right? It's what you take from each batch that has gone before it in order to make the batch that you're making right now. And I was sitting at the place my wife and I are staying, and I was thinking about today. And I started to think about that sourdough starter batch, which the rumor has it, or the legend has it, is 100 years worth of sourdough batches have poured into the one that they ate yesterday morning, that we ate this morning. And I started to think about Lee's life. And I started to think about all of you who are represented here, and family and friends. And I started to think about how Lee's life is like that sourdough bread starter. And that every part of him is a part of every one of you. Every part of him is a part of you. And so when you see all of these musical instruments, and I felt like I should have closed on guitar, but when you see all of these things, that sourdough bread starter of Lee Henry in your life. When you see grandsons who are such incredible young men, and granddaughters and people in his life that are such direct reflections of him, he is that starter that lives in and through you. And he will be with you for the rest of your life. And that's the miracle and the joy of being able to share life with people. I think one of God's greatest gifts to us is the people that love us and lead us in our lives. So that's what we celebrate today. That's the life that we honored today. So I started asking the question, how do you celebrate such an epic man? And I said, I don't know, but I think we did a pretty damn good job. Woohoo! Now, I am a preacher, and that's the first time I've ever cussed in a funeral service.
It's warranted.
Yeah, it's warranted. From what I've heard, that's part of that sourdough bread that stuck with me from this weekend here.
If you hang out long enough, you might have another condition you've never.
And I may have to change professions too. We do appreciate you being here on behalf of the family. I know that it means so much that you've come to spend this time with you, but I do want to remind you that the day's just getting started. And for some of you, you're like, really? Yes. There's a lot of food. There's going to be live music. We're going to have a good time for the rest of the day. But this is what we're going to do. The family's going to have to exit first because they've got to go get some of the food and get started. So I'm going to have the family actually at this time, if you'll stand up, and you all can exit this way. There's supposed to be a cavalry of golf carts, but I don't see them, so you may be walking it. So we're going to let them walk away at this point. But we do want to say thank you, and as part of our process for the rest of the day, we're going to give you the opportunity over here, and I was hoping I could read it. What's the name of the saloon over here?
Dry Bean Saloon.
The Dry Bean Saloon. They've got a bunch of memorabilia of Lee's over there. We want you to take some time to go check that out. And then over here at I remembered it all day, the Boot Hill Cemetery. Over here, they've got some stuff, obviously, in the chuck wagon that you can go look at as well. And so take some time to do that. We're going to kind of just be hanging out while the family gets stuff ready. And we're doing that so you don't bother them so they can go get food ready because we're hungry, all right? So we do appreciate you being here. And on behalf of the whole family, once again, have a great day. Please stay, hang out, party with us. God bless you all. 1, 2,